Okay, so we're going to talk about Socrates. So on your paper, you should have already written down what? What did you write down? Yes. What I want you to do next, and again, write it where you still have room, is this first line here. You don't have to write this. This first line, sum it up in his words, just like I showed you with King Leonidas. So it should start with I, or it can start with something where it's in the present tense, where he's talking about the Socratic method. So I'll give you about 2 minutes to, or just a very brief amount of time to do that. And again, you're just doing it just enough so you know what you're saying in his words. Everybody clear on that? Remember, you don't have to have an exact definition. In fact, you don't want to have an exact definition. You look confused.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Reading is good, I guess. And if you have any questions, you can raise your hand and just ask me. And make sure you leave a little room. If we have to write on the back, it's not a big deal. I'll give you about another 30 seconds. And then we'll move. Now, what I want you to do is write your name on the top of your paper. Make sure your name is on it. So we can't identify your handwriting. Make sure your name is on the very top. What I want you to do is pass your paper to somebody else. Just make sure you don't end up with your own paper. You don't have to get up for this, but just pass your paper to somebody else. Oh. Okay, once you have somebody else's paper, on that other person's paper, in the room they've left, does everybody have somebody else's paper? Raise your hand if you don't. Anybody don't? Everybody's good? Okay. You don't? Oh, have somebody else's paper. I'm sorry, no. Alright. Under that first, wherever that first person writes, on the other person's paper, you've got this second definition. I want you to do the same thing on their paper with trial. So how would Socrates talk about his own trial? If they didn't leave you room, you can flip it over on the back, write Socrates, and just do it out. So again, you're writing in kind of as Socrates is telling you, just what's he going to say about his trial. Everybody clear what you're supposed to do? Again, on somebody else's paper. And if they gave the wrong definition for the first one, don't correct it. Give you about a minute to do this. About 20 more seconds. Can I do the countdown for the last 10 seconds? Is that too corny? Alright, stop what you have. Do you need a second? If you need, once you're done, pass it to somebody else, not the original person. So now we're on the third person. So again, just you don't want to end up with the person that belongs to, and you don't want to have this, I guess you don't want to have this paper that you already had a second time. everybody pass it to the third. It'd be the third person that has seen that paper. If you can't do anything, it's all right. Actually, that's a good thing. I'll explain it. All right. Does everybody have a second person's paper? Does anybody not have a second person's paper? Does anybody have one they can pass to? Y'all can switch it if you want to, as long as you don't have to. Just switch with me. As long as y'all haven't seen those and they're not your own paper. And I will give you 50 seconds to this last one. So you've already done Socratic method on your own, you've done trial on somebody else's, and now you're going to do poison on somebody else's. Give you about 20 more seconds. And again, the idea is you do not want to write all that. You want to sum it up in how Socrates, he's talking to us from the grave, obviously, but as he would kind of explain this to us. About 10 more seconds. All right, stop what you're writing. Give it back to the person that owns it. So whoever's name is on the paper, give it back to that person. And if you're not done writing, that's fine. You don't have to. Raise your hand if you do not have your own paper. They need their papers back. Okay, no, if you haven't finished, don't worry about it. It's okay. Listen, if you don't have it done, it's fine. Pass it on. I'll promise you this. If you don't have it done, you will not have to drink hemlock poison. You will not. I guess we wouldn't kill you. You'd kill yourself with it because that's not going to do that. All right. Does everybody have their own paper back? Okay. If I was to ask you, are you comfortable enough right now to take a quiz or a test or an exam or something with just what you have written on there? Raise your hand if you'd be cool with that. You'd be cool with that. So we've got maybe 3 people, and most people, I'm kind of comfortable with it. Who would not be comfortable with that? You can raise your hand first.
Is it just on what we have?
Yeah, just what you have here. But you got your. Would y'all would not be comfortable with taking like a quiz or a test with this?
No.
And why is that the case? What is it? What doesn't? Well, no. Is it because do you trust everybody else to do exactly what I say 100% correctly? Do you trust me to give it all to you correctly? A little bit. Okay, well that's better than saying no on the first time. With Socrates, it will be a jury, 501 of essentially his peers, that will vote him out and tell him he does, and basically say, we don't want to kick you out, we're actually going to make you kill yourself. His student, the next guy who we're going to talk about, Plato, and I'm going to kind of tie this all together, he's going to remember that. So on Plato, so now you got your first paper back. What I want you to do on Plato is write, my name is Plato, I was a Greek philosopher. Do it the same way. So I wanted you to kind of be in, I guess, Plato's mindset, because he wasn't very comfortable with everybody kind of thinking on their own. Even if you might have trusted what I gave you. I don't want to say you don't trust each other, but I was moving you along. Maybe everybody didn't finish. Even if we had to vote on a correct answer for a question, you might not always know it. So just like Plato was kind of hesitant to trust everybody else, were y'all not kind of hesitant to trust everybody else as well? Raise your hand if you were. I mean, that's what one person? Two people? If you were hesitant to trust what everybody else wrote. I think most of you have raised your hand over both cases, but that's the idea. So what I want you to do with Plato is just like we've done, just take this, not the first one, but the second one, and kind of using some of the stuff that I've already said, kind of write it from Plato's perspective, what he thought about democracy. And again, democracy is basically what killed his teacher. It was a democratic society that voted his teacher to have to kill himself. So how do you think that, so what I want you to do is from his perspective, write down how you think that's, I'd like to say messing with his mind, but how that's affecting his thinking. Everybody got that on your own paper? We're not have to flip yet. Yeah, in the second bubble. Yeah, in the second bubble. You should have already written down, my name is Plato. I'm a, yeah, second one, yeah. Now, if I was to give you the option to, for the next one, to pass it off or keep it yourself, which one would you choose to do if I told you, oh, you can use this to take a test afterwards? Keep it yourself. And that's logical thinking, because you know if you care enough to fill it out, you're going to write down the correct answer. If you pass it off to somebody else, who knows? It's not, first of all, it's not theirs. They might care enough to fill it out correctly. They might not care enough. That's this whole idea of logical thinking. These Greek philosophers were all about logic, reason, but they lived in kind of a real world. And so this book that Plato wrote, The Republic, really more of a kind of a big essay. It kind of said that I think you said you trusted me a little bit. At least I think you did. That was the idea. We're imperfect creatures, so we should at least give somebody power who's trustworthy, someone who we believe in. Not everybody. We don't trust all y'all, but we might can pick out one good person to lead us. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about Plato? All right. So on Aristotle, same deal on the last. Are these thought bubbles or word bubbles? Write down, my name is Aristotle. I guess you can write present or past tense. I am a Greek philosopher. Okay, and just as Socrates, he's kind of he's the first kind of important philosopher. His student was Plato, and again, you don't have to. We're not going to worry about this first one. Aristotle is going to be a student of Plato. Socrates didn't leave any writings. All of his writings come to us from Plato, and most of what Plato said comes to us from Aristotle. Aristotle is the big thinker when it comes to kind of Greek philosophy. He's the one that left the most in writing for us today. And so in this last bubble, you're going to get to do this on your own. What I do want you to do is kind of, with this golden mean, kind of a dense term there. It's not something that, it's a term he came up with. After reading the definition, kind of sum that up in what Aristotle would say the golden mean was. And we're going to talk about it in a second. So it's going to say, I believe that a golden mean is. A golden mean is. Or something of that effect, where Aristotle is telling you himself what this term, a golden mean, is.